All right. Well, hello to all of our viewers, and thanks so much for tuning in to our live Q&A today. My name is Liz Eggleston, and I work on Course Report, which is a resource for finding the coding bootcamp that's right for you. So if you haven't looked at Course Report yet, you can use our directory to find schools that fit your needs. And you should check out our blog for unique features like interviews with students and instructors and founders at bootcamps across the world, like this one. So I'm really excited for this Q&A today because at Course Report, one of the questions that I get asked the most is about applying to bootcamps. So people really want to know if they're ready to apply, what schools are looking for, what they can do to prepare. And recently we found out about this Bootcamp Prep Course, which is a collaboration between Thinkful and MakerSquare. So who better to answer our questions about this Bootcamp Prep Course than Dan Friedman, the founder of Thinkful, and Harsh Patel, the founder of MakerSquare. And they've joined us today to do some live question and answers. So I just want to remind everyone that this is going to be a Q&A style hangout. So use the questions tab to send in any questions that you have, or you can tweet at Course Report, or you can also comment on the Google Plus page. So we will go ahead and get started. So I guess first of all, just introduce yourselves, Dan and Harsh. How long have you both been working in the coding bootcamp world, and what sort of inspired you to start Thinkful and MakerSquare, respectively?
You can go first, Dan?
Sure, sounds good. So we started Thinkful about 2.5 years ago. And I have been working on the education team basically since we started. And when we were first getting started, it was kind of the early days of the MOOCs, and Code Academy was sort of a couple months in, and it was clear that there was something really exciting happening in both the spheres of sort of adult technical education and online learning. And we wanted to sort of find the intersection of that and basically run this experiment of is it possible to just deliver much higher quality online education than anyone else is working on. We started around this thesis of if we offer every student a mentor and just tons of one-on-one help and support, they'll have a better experience, they'll learn faster, they'll stay motivated. It worked, and in a lot of ways, everything we've done in the last 2.5 years has been sort of building on that foundation.
Cool. Harsh, how about you with MakerSquare?
So yeah, we started early 2013, which I would say was right after a couple of the major programming schools started. And we started first in Austin, Texas, and we started because a couple of us had good experiences and bad experiences with other programming schools, and we wanted to make sure that everyone, we wanted to create a school that we wish that we would have gone to at the end of the day. The school that we wish we would have all experienced. Some of us had a computer science background, and even that, we wanted to start a school that was better than computer science programs at universities and better than other programming schools that we had experienced. So that's when we got together in early 2013 to start MakerSquare, and then recently we opened an office or a campus in San Francisco, and have been trucking along since then.
Cool. Well, y'all are both veterans in this sort of young space, so we're happy to have you. I guess this is a question for both of y'all, but so there are a number of online mentored boot camps these days, and there are so many immersive coding boot camps as well. Why did Thinkful and MakerSquare choose each other? How did you find each other? And what sort of makes you confident in working with each other in particular?
I've got a perspective on that too, but say that again.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, so Thinkful and MakerSquare have had a relationship for a while now. When last South by Southwest, so in early 2014, we invited Thinkful to come to MakerSquare to do a panel, like a Q&A panel on the programming school industry. And funny enough, the schools that were represented were Thinkful, MakerSquare, and Hack Reactor.
Oh, that's funny.
And that's when we first started working with Thinkful. That's when I first met Dan, and it was pretty clear that we were on the same page in terms of having a good, high-quality experience, which is something that I respect a lot in other institutions or in other people. And it was clear that we both wanted to create something that was very high quality, which is the largest barrier to a partnership. And that barrier was lifted immediately when we started talking about our two organizations at South by Southwest.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, obviously we have worked with or sort of we've gotten to know quite a few bootcamps to this point, but I think I've found whenever I've spent time with Harsh that we think very similarly about growth, about the core challenges to what we do, about the way in which the two things that we do are complementary. And I think when you talk to, as I'm sure you do, tons of different bootcamp founders, you hear a wide variety of perspectives, and we just think very similarly about what makes great education. And Harsh comes from a background in the classroom, and I think half of our first bunch of hires had similar backgrounds. I think we respect the teacher in a way that a lot of programmers or even programming schools don't, and that overlap, I think, was the foundation for feeling pretty good about working together.
Yeah, there's so many nuances between all of these programs, so it's really cool they all found each other. So Dan, tell us what this prep course looks like. What's the sort of rundown of what people are getting when they're signing up for it?
Yeah, so the course is a month long, and it starts yesterday and today, and it runs right into the start date for the next MakerSquare full-time course. So the idea is that students who are looking to get into that and don't yet have the skills or planning to take that course but want to just continue to prepare more intensively will devote basically most of their free time between now and then while they keep their job. So the foundation of it is you're working through a curriculum that's all project-oriented, and we'll talk more about that later. And then you're meeting online with your mentor once per week during the evening, and then you have a Saturday in-person session with your peers and with a mentor supervising there. So the time that you spend during the week is going to be a mix of working independently or remotely pair programming, building small projects, focusing on primarily JavaScript programming, but some development tools like get on the command line, and then on Saturday you'll do a couple of hours of pair programming with a peer and getting help from a mentor who will be there working with them.
Cool. I want to talk about a lot of those things. But first, Harsh, I guess it's interesting to me that this is sort of marketed as like a way to get into MakerSquare, in particular. So I just want to talk about sort of like that application process. So how many applications do you get to MakerSquare for each cohort?
It depends on the particular cohort or the time of year, and also depends on how frequent we have start dates available. The most general answer that I can confidently give is several hundred per class. And
were you finding that there were like specific things? I guess what was the sort of like inspiration to create this curriculum? Were you finding that there were like specific things that a lot of the applicants were not coming to the table with, or?
Sure. So our admissions criteria has increased since we started,
mm-hmm.
and it's now reached a point where we're expecting students to learn essentially the foundations of how to code on their own, specifically
mm-hmm.
JavaScript. And when we started raising that admissions bar, as from the day one that we started, we started seeing more and more applicants needed a little bit more help before they were ready to tackle the technical interview and the programming challenges, which is completely okay.
Right.
But we were looking for ways to help them out during that process, and in Austin in particular, we held in-person workshops for free to help students get started with programming, and that just wasn't scalable for the applicants we were getting across the country. So this was a great way to collaborate on doing that. We know that Thinkful is amongst the best in terms of teaching people remotely through a mentor, and we knew that they would be able to create an experience that was well crafted for students, and it just made sense when we first started talking about it for Thinkful to be able to teach remotely and have interested applicants come to MakerSquare during the weekend on Saturdays. So we did see that a lot of students needed additional help before they're ready, and that's when this course made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I'm sure that people were actually using Thinkful, like all of the different Thinkful courses, to like prepare anyways in their own way. So it's cool that this is like tailored to that experience.
Yeah, they absolutely were. I know for a fact that the front-end web development course that Thinkful has was one that a non-trivial number of students at MakerSquare had already taken in the past. And that course it's a really good foundation. And so when we decided to create this course, we took things from that course and added a few other things to really specifically tailor it towards programming in JavaScript.
Cool. Dan, can you give us a quick rundown of the technologies that are going to be covered over the 4 weeks?
Sure. So in week 1, students will do a very fast introduction to HTML, CSS, jQuery, GitHub, and the command line. That's a lot for 1 week, but nearly every student that signs up has some experience with those already. And the focus is just not on mastering those, but learning enough of those to be comfortable. And then weeks 2 and 3 are fully focused on JavaScript, and it's just fundamental programming in JavaScript. And then in week 4, it jumps into, more JavaScript basically, but particularly Ajax and building front ends that interact with back ends.
One of the most important things that I hear like admissions people and like founders at Bootcamp say is that they want to see like a demonstrated effort and know that that the applicant has like actually built something. Does the Bootcamp Prep course help students like build a portfolio or complete projects, or is it more sort of curriculum based?
Yeah, it does, and the sort of baseline success case is about 4 kind of small to medium-sized projects. Obviously, it's a fast course, so in our real front-end course, you build in our 3-month front-end course, it's a real front-end course as well. You build, I think, 2 or 3 times that, but the projects here are still really strong, and I think the most important ones from that made it into this 1-month course, and we've basically distilled content into 5 assignment types. Introductory reading for when you're first just getting a taste of a completely new concept or technology, a drill for a code-along tutorial for basically increasing familiarity, a drill for starting to get students to actively retrieve something from memory, a challenge which is sort of bigger than a drill, might require a few hours, possibly even 2 sittings to complete, and then a project which is a full portfolio-ready piece that might take 10 plus hours. And so this follows that same format and has a number of drills, challenges, and projects that students can walk away with.
Are mentors part for this course? Are they part of the Thinkful network, or are they part of the MakerSquare network, or both?
So the mentors are primarily coming from Thinkful, although we've talked to a couple of early MakerSquare alum about joining as mentors for the course as well. And we haven't yet been able to, just sort of because of speed, we haven't yet interviewed them, so they're not going to be mentors for this course. But if we do it again in the future, we'd love to get a couple of them on board mentoring future MakerSquare students.
Yeah, I think that would be really awesome. Especially if it's sort of feeding into the start dates for MakerSquare. Well, speaking of that, does and this may be something you can't answer quite yet, but could this course prepare someone to apply to another coding bootcamp, or only MakerSquare, or maybe more specifically like only a JavaScript bootcamp?
There's one other programming bootcamp that it can definitely prepare students for.
Oh, what is that one, Harsh?
Glad you asked. Hack Reactor, in fact. We have similar admissions processes. In our technical interview, we realized is very similar after learning what their technical interview is like this past week. So I anticipate that if people can get admitted to MakerSquare, or can pass the technical interview at MakerSquare, which is the exact same as the one at Hack Reactor, they should be able to pass that one as well. So this course would prepare people for, at the minimum, 2 schools, MakerSquare and Hack Reactor. I imagine other programming schools would also be able to take advantage of this because of the rigor in the application process that we put in MakerSquare and Hack Reactor in particular. So I think this would work for many other programming schools, not just JavaScript specific as well.
Okay.
Because I think that schools that don't teach JavaScript would also love to have applicants that are well versed in JavaScript.
Yeah, well, and I want to talk about that in a second, just in case anybody who's watching didn't know. Some recent, I guess, news was that MakerSquare was recently acquired by Hack Reactor. So they're working together now, which is awesome. Harsh, on that, will MakerSquare continue to operate as a separate bootcamp, or do y'all envision Hack Reactor and MakerSquare combining in a more substantive way in the future?
Good question. So brand-wise, we'll continue to operate as 2 different schools, but essentially we're sister schools. We spent the last week in San Francisco holed up in a room with our founders and their founders to figure out what the transition would look like. And essentially, from a student's perspective, the transition doesn't really look like much. But in the internals, we now share the same curriculum, we'll be the same place, and we share the same admissions criteria. So we're teachers at the different schools based on the teachers and the vibe. So there is substantive collaboration, but on a brand perspective, strictly on the surface brand perspective, MakerSquare remains as a separate school.
Cool. So for people who haven't read, Harsh did a little interview with us on Course Report a couple weeks ago about why they switched MakerSquare to 100% JavaScript curriculum. But for people who haven't read that, Harsh, can you tell us why y'all sort of decided to make that switch from a sort of like programming language perspective? Maybe it had something to do with Hack Reactor as well, but
Yeah, ironically, it had nothing to do with Hack Reactor.
It didn't? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we haven't opened any conversations with them at that point when we made that decision. This was something that we've been talking about for over a year now, and I'll keep it brief so as not to sidetrack this conversation too much. But it basically boils down to the fact that because JavaScript is prevalent on the server side nowadays, it allows us to teach one language while through the entire time at MakerSquare while still being able to build a fully functional web application and learn software engineering. And the employment market for JavaScript engineers is on the rise, and that also helps. So there's 2 factors to it. One is we're always focused on what's going to make our students more employable. Teaching JavaScript helps with that. And 2, from a more educational perspective, focusing in one programming language while mastering it is more effective because you don't have to context switch while you're learning. It's important to context switch on the job because you're going to write code in very many different programming languages, but while you're learning, it's effective to stay within one language and master the programming language.
Cool. Good answer. Okay, well, if we get back to the Bootcamp Prep course a little bit. So, Dan, am I right in saying that this is the first time that Thinkful is doing like a sort of offline element to their courses as well?
It is. This is our first blended course.
Why did you decide to require that sort of in-person element in this class?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so because it sort of so nicely fits with MakerSquare's full-time courses, both being tailored for getting in and for preparing you to be a great student in them, and timing-wise, it rolls right into it. We wanted to experiment with this idea of blended courses to basically try this idea of mixing what we do already, which is sort of really efficient, effective online learning, with offline community, which no question has something special to it that can't be or shouldn't be replicated online. I mean, we do plenty of online community, and I think that's an important part of even just the online-only courses. But there is something special to offline, and because we're trying to get people to move through the course at a faster pace, and we're trying to get a lot into just a month, we together came up with the idea of let's actually just get students into MakerSquare schools on Saturdays and doing pair programming in person to just absolutely guarantee that they're going to be spending enough time to be successful in this month.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and it also gives them a chance to like be in that environment that they might be in one day. So that's
exactly.
And so if for those in-person sessions, will they be working with MakerSquare staff, or will there ever be Thinkful mentors?
There's oh, sorry, go for it.
Oh, no, go ahead.
There's a Thinkful mentor who, well, for this first one, there were a Thinkful mentor who will be there in person. Although, at that point, the line between Thinkful mentor and MakerSquare staff is pretty blurred because he's going to have a key to the school, and he'll be familiar with what MakerSquare is trying to do. So,
yeah, exactly.
He originally came through us, but at that point, he's helping out both.
Yeah,
and we'll have classes on Saturdays now as well. So there's going to be students and staff that are there, and we don't really have any intention of purposely separating students in this course from the students in our immersive course. But they'll be separated by the coursework that they're doing, obviously, but physical space-wise, we want to create a community between the current MakerSquare students and people that are looking to prepare for MakerSquare.
Yeah, that's awesome. How many students will be in this first class, or what are you expecting?
There are 5 students in it right now, and we're capping it at 8.
Okay.
So somewhere between 5 and 8.
You have room for a couple more. And when does the next class start?
We don't have an exact date right now, actually.
Okay.
Actually, I need to talk about that separately.
Okay, but people should get their applications in soon. Well, I guess are there like admission standards for this class, or is it mostly like location?
No, anyone can sign up for this, and so the promise, while in-person bootcamps and MakerSquare have to be and are right to be selective, the thesis of this and the promise of this is that it's accessible, and that it promises to prepare anyone, no matter how beginner you are, to join a full-time course.
I love that. Accessibility is huge right now in online courses, offline courses, so I think that's an awesome step.
And because this is the first time that we're running this course, we wanted to make sure that we learn exactly how to do it properly. So Dan and I will be talking as this course goes on to determine when the next start date will be based on how confident we feel that we can deliver an amazing education experience for this first class. So I'm confident that there will be another one, but we just wanted to leave it open for us to determine a specific date for later.
Definitely. We have a question from Kirsten, and I think we might have kind of answered this throughout, but she was asking, have students gone through Thinkful before attending a tech boot camp in the past? And if so, have you found that this increased their success during the program? Dan, have y'all like tracked those outcomes or?
So we've gotten a decent amount of feedback on it, and we've had, I'd have to guess, we've had over 100 students who, once they decided they were going to go to a boot camp, came back and said, okay, how do I make sure I'm going to be the best student at that boot camp, and turn to us for that. And the feedback we have consistently heard is, first of all, it prepared me because I'd built more projects than any of my peers. And second, I mastered one or two or maybe three of the technologies or concepts. And that meant that, a third or a quarter of what was being taught I was already really comfortable with, so I had a lot of slack to go deeper into other concepts that were being taught or to spend more time on projects. And that meant if I fell behind on something, I could catch up. And if I had particular interest in one concept, I could spend extra time on it. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on that, and it seems to work pretty well for that purpose.
Yeah, everybody, all of the students that I talk to, I always ask like how you avoid burnout at a coding bootcamp because they're so intensive, and like that's the number one answer that I get is like making sure that if the school is giving you pre-work, make sure that you do it all, do as much as you can before you get there so that you're really like able to keep up. So this is cool.
And we found a similar sentiment with students that have done Thinkful before MakerSquare. There's no question that they are better prepared, which helps them take better advantage of the pace of the class. So I think it's a resounding yes, students are better prepared, and therefore it increases their success during the program.
Very cool. Heard it from both sides. Well, Harsh, y'all had a cool announcement with the acquisition with Hack Reactor, but Thinkful also had a cool announcement this month with the announcement of their latest fundraise. So congratulations to you, Dan. Is this kind of like prep class and sort of maybe veering into like offline endeavors? Is that a goal of the new funding, or is this not a goal, I guess?
Sure. So the goal and the thesis behind the fundraise is that we want to do more to fulfill the entire student journey. So this is one iteration of that one sort of possible expression of it. And the other big thing that we've launched so far is career services for all Thinkful students to help them with whatever job search they're taking on. And we have students across the spectrum from taking their course, they're learning a new technology, or sort of pivoting maybe from DevOps to web development, or sort of any number of paths. So what we're developing with career services is basically a program to help people just run a great job search, and that's we're testing it privately with a number of students right now, and we had a pretty overwhelming response when we first told our students and alumni about it. So we've got a long wait list now for the next couple months.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. Is there anything, I think that we touched on everyone's questions. Dan, Harsh, is there anything that we didn't, oh, actually we've got
There's one more question from Lindsay.
From Lindsay, just to understand correctly, the Thinkful Prep course is starting today for the March 2nd date, and then it's TBA when the... Right.
That's correct.
That's right. Okay, cool. Awesome. Is there anything that y'all wanted to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think you did a pretty thorough job of asking all the questions, so thank you for that.
Excellent.
No,
Awesome.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Harsh.
Yeah, okay, well, thanks so much for joining us today, everyone who's watching for this live Q&A. Dan and Harsh, can't thank you enough for being here. If you have any additional questions for Thinkful or MakerSquare about the Bootcamp Prep course or any of their other courses, I'll send out their contact information after this. And then if you have any questions about Course Report, obviously don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll send out the recording of this Q&A, so check your inboxes for that. And you can share it with any of your friends who might have missed it live. And then, of course, visit coursereport.com and sign up for our email list, so you'll get all of our future updates on webinars and interviews. And you can tweet us and tell us which school or topic you'd like to hear about at our next webinar. But I appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Dan.